And so all ideas of a journey end here now in this moment. That the great surrender is only ever about the surrender to the moment. The mind can create all kinds of ideas about what the surrender is to, but the surrender is always just to the moment, just to what is, because what is the truth. What is divine wholeness. And it is our resistance to what is that keeps us in separation, keeps us from love, the love that is longed for, the divine that is longed for. When we imagine that that is outside of us, then we are attempting to control the life, my life, and how I want to receive love. And we are keeping ourselves from the great surrender into love with all of our misconceptions of what love truly is. Now, love is openness, and it is about the wholehearted openness to be here now, so that openness can recognize openness, so that the great unbounded openness of true self can greet you as yourself. Same. So it is all about this great surrender to this moment. It's not an imagined surrender in the future. It's not about being ready for the surrender. It's about the recognition that all that the mind imagines is the Maya, and the surrender is now. The surrender is now. The surrender is the letting go of the idea of a journey, of a path, of a future, of achieving something, attaining something. It's the surrender into the now, into this moment. To be here now so fully is to be yourself, is to surrender into the naturalness where there is no one wanting anything. Now, this depth of surrender, of course, it's simple, but it's not easy. And in a way, what plays as the journey is the seeming gradual surrender of everything that keeps us from the self, the being, the love that we are. Essentially, we are longing for unconditional love, and we are seeking pleasure. We're seeking a false kind of love. We're seeking the pleasure of the me that is satisfied in the world. We are bargaining away our true longing. And the true longing for love is the longing for openness. It is the longing for the ability to surrender and not resist, to surrender into allowing and not control. The ability to, in that open surrender, resting as the one self that can openly receive everything that is arising in the moment without resistance, without wanting to control. And we come to recognize the true and deep meaning of what this life is for. We stop pursuing pleasure. We stop pursuing pleasure because we realize that it is just a distraction from the great longing and the true meaning. We could say that we are longing for the life to have true meaning, but the only true meaning is the surrender into the eternal self. Once this is recognized, then one-pointedness begins. So this is where there can be a longish period of contemplation of what this is really all about. What this longing for freedom is really all about. That it is not freedom for someone. It's not a gaining for the someone. And it's in the recognition that there is nothing in this for the someone. And in a way, the great disappointment of that, the great disappointment of all that the me has imagined that this is, that what awakening is, what enlightenment is, everything that the me has imagined it to be, it is not. And so just this great disappointment of the me is such an incredibly powerful phase of this unfolding, because it is the surrender. It's the surrender of what the me has conceptualized freedom to be. All of the concepts and ideas, all of the beliefs about this, because the recognition that there is nothing in this for the me, that this is an awakening out of the me, out of separation, and it cannot be imagined. But at some point in the receiving of pointings, there will be a depth of contemplation where it really lands, oh, this is not for me. This is not something that the me gets. That what we are speaking of is a surrender out of that, because the me is essentially protection. The me is separation. The me is misery. And that is why the me is constantly seeking for pleasure, is because the me is misery. It's suffering, because the me and the protection is constantly resisting what is, constantly resisting the moment. And every moment spent in resistance is a moment of suffering. It's a moment of struggle. So life in the human condition is a constant struggle, because the conditioning is a protection and a resistance against what is, and an attempt to control the moment to be a moment that I, the me, likes. But that is not the truth. That is the illusion. What is happening is just happening, just as it is. And it is the surrender to this, the ability to let go and let God's will be done. Let the divine will be done. And the way that there is this kind of allowing is to be the being that is natural allowing, to be the natural one that is in perpetual surrender. Part of this surrender is to meet the moment, and of course meet resistance that arises, and see it for what it is, illuminate it in the light of awareness. Now, only the light of awareness, the true light, can illuminate the Maya. So the light of awareness is a magical light. It is the light of grace. It is only this light that can illuminate Maya. So it is like this certain kind of X-ray that can see through the illusion, see through the fogginess of Maya. Because when we are in the Maya, we don't even really know we are in it. And that's why it's so sticky. It's so sticky because only awareness illuminates that we're even in the Maya, in the illusion, in the dream. So awareness illuminates, and awareness is the only way to perpetually illuminate and surrender out of the sticky illusion of separation. Now, there is no point trying to master the Maya. And in a way, that is what the mind is perpetually attempting to do. It's trying to get one over on the Maya. Now, what is the Maya? Maya is Ma, the divine's play. It is her sticky play, but she's not sticky in it because she knows that it's all her. But it is her sticky web. And the only way out of it is to surrender to her, is to surrender into the oneness, into the substance, trying to get one over on the divine by controlling and attempting to imagine that you can master the dream, that you can make this life and win the game. She smiles. She smiles compassionately, patiently, and she just loves on. She shines on. And it is only to come to recognize the essence nature that is one with her that allows us grace, the tool of illumination, and that is the divine given awareness, to discover what we are in truth, so that true surrender may happen in the light of awareness. The humbling may happen, and the Maya is seen through. The sticky illusion, the sticky dream is seen through. That you can daydream your life away, fantasizing about what the me wants. But it's all a waste of this graced opportunity. The graced opportunity is the grace of a human life, and that the only purpose and meaning of a human life is to, let's say in the simplest terms, learn surrender, learn what love is. And any amount of learning surrender is a divine merit that we will carry forward, because we are surrendering out of the desire mechanism and the protection. We're surrendering out of that in order to come to the attuned alignment with the divine nature, where everything that we are longing for is already here. But we cannot imagine that, and we cannot be given it before we have surrendered. Otherwise, we would misuse it, right? The me, it doesn't even, you can't even really have the me and the truth in the same space because the me doesn't exist in the way. But if the me was given the keys to the absolute truth, it could only misuse it because it doesn't know any better than to move within the stickiness of the desire mechanism. So in a way, if there is a quest, it is to be here now, to surrender so fully to the moment, to surrender to what is in this moment, and be here in the grace, be the awareness that is the light. And as the awareness that is the light, shine the light that is simple and pure upon whatever in this moment could possibly be resisted or a distraction, so that there can be a deeper remembering and attunement with what you are in truth. We are here to learn surrender, to learn what love truly is. And we can only know what love truly is when we know the love that we are. We cannot learn about love in the world, because the world created by the mind is not true love. It is bargaining. It is a currency. It is imagined. There is no true love between two humans. Love is where the sense of two beings meet in the one being. It is meeting in the oneness where there is no want, no desire, no need. There is a purity, and that purity is divine. And it is this purity that we are seeking for. But the seeking for this purity in the play of the world, which is a corrupt projection of the mind, we cannot find purity in that which is somehow partially distorted out of the truth. We can only find the purity in the essence nature, and the essence nature is the presence of this moment. It is the substance of this moment. And in that, it is essentially the light and the resonance of this moment, the alive presence of this moment. This is where truth is. This is where love is. This is where grace is. We cannot find grace until the mind has settled into the being, because there is no grace in the mind. The mind is so tangled up in itself that it does not know grace, because it is so tangled in its own sticky web. It is only in the relaxation, in the surrender into being right here now, that we discover the grace of openness. We discover the grace of the essence nature, and we discover the grace of true surrender, which is the letting go of wanting this moment to be anything other than it is, to just be here so fully. And when we discover what this life is all about, when we really can feel and recognize the meaning, that the meaning is in this surrender, that the meaning is in this openness. It does not mean anything to the me, but there is a deep sense of meaningfulness, of purpose, but it is not driven. It is an open receptivity. So it is coming to relax into what is unfamiliar to the mind and the me, that has learnt to be driven, has learnt to push, has learnt to have to work for. But this is a different kind of effort. It's like an effortless effort. It's a depth of surrender which requires a courage and a resolve and a resilience. And the effort is to stay open. The effort is required to not go towards the familiar conditionings and to rest as the being, where the me is not getting what it wants. The effort is to not play out the habitual ways of trying to get what the me wants, in a deeper knowing that to not move in those familiar patterns is inviting greater depth, is inviting a remembering of truth. And it is in every taste, every glimpse we have of this, that we open more to the recognition that allows there to even be a contemplation that anchors the knowing, oh, this is not about the me. There is nothing here for the me. All the effort in the direction of the world and everything I have tried to do has all been the Maya, has all been the sticky mess, has all been the dream. So much spirituality in this age of delusion is just the Maya, and it's not actually carrying you into your true nature. It's carrying you into more of the stickiness of the mind, imagining that healing is in the world, imagining that if you just try this, if you just try this, but it's all about more experience for the me, and it's delusion. It is to see through all of the delusion of more experience, and particularly more spiritual experience. The only way out of the delusion is to be aware and to meet the moment as it is. So much of what is attempted for healing is actually not really healing, but just making more fodder for the mind to nourish itself with. True healing only comes about when we transmute the desire mechanism into the being, and when we actually learn the possibility of surrender is the only way. So we have to awaken to honesty. We have to awaken to a depth of honesty within our own direct experience. And this only happens when there is a willingness to shine the light and see all of the ways that we distract. And even the ways that we distract that the me can imagine have meaning. That so much of the new age is occult, and it's not true spirituality, that it is more delusion, and it isn't actually leading anywhere but deeper into the maze of the mind. And it is only when we come to be able to illuminate the Maya that we have any possibility of escape from it. But the escape, it's in the moment, it's in the seeing, oh wow, that is total delusion. That, all of the story of my life is a projected idea, and reality, true reality, the one reality, is this moment completely empty of all story, of me. It's this moment completely empty. It is the silence, the stillness of being. It is being no one, being no thing, and not having any attachment to anything or anyone. And the surrender into this moment as life, surrendering into itself in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. just being, being the silent being. And so as these words come, it is about the resonance of recognition and the attunement that happens where you recognize what is true and real in your direct experience. It is not about learning something or creating more concepts, in a way, pulling this speaking into the Maya, where the mind is trying to understand. It is about just receiving, and where there is an attunement, resting in the recognition and dropping into the absorption in your true self, absorbed in the being, absorbed in the openness, in the emptiness and the equanimity of being. Simply being here. To the mind, this makes no sense. And that is why it has to dawn as a realization, like a waking up from the dream. And this is in the recognition that you are the awareness, the simple recognition that what you are is not the person, that what you are is the presence, that you are the aware being that is simply here now. And as the aware being here now, it is just to be here. Once this knowing is recognized, it is to dock in the recognition. And the surrender is the surrender to be yourself, to be here, to just let go of the grip of the mind that wants to control. And once this knowing of the being is in place, there is a knowing what to let go into. Let go into the being. Let go into the stillness. And it all starts here now. So we cannot explain to the mind or the me how this works. We can only illuminate the Maya, only illuminate the illusion. And once we see through the illusion, then we are aligned as the consciousness that is consciously awake and aware. And the consciousness that is the true nature is intelligence. And here the intelligence that illuminates a deeper and deeper knowing. And in the knowing, there's a flow. And the flow of life is the way that consciousness moves to know itself and really wake itself up and pull itself out of the stickiness of the Maya through its own conscious, awake awareness. And now this process is a refinement. And this process is a humbling. It's a humbling again and again. It's a humbling out of the me that wants and needs and attempts to control, out of the me that wants to be seen and heard, and to get in the world that is illusion. And so any achievement, any pleasure, any getting in the world is always going to be temporary and transient. And whatever is temporary and transient is not the truth. That's the marker. It's definitely the marker within a spiritual experience, is that if it's temporary, it's not the truth. Only what is permanent, constant, is the truth. And what we can discover is that only the being is that constant, permanent, unmoving, unchanging reality. It is all that can be trusted. We could even say all that can be relied upon is yourself. Nothing more is needed than to know yourself. Once there is an opening into consciousness, consciousness knows how. But even though consciousness knows how, still the layers of the mind and the residual mind consciousness will keep trying and trying. And this is where there is a refinement and a great humbling of all of the conditionings, all of the vasanas, right? The imprints, the deep held imprints and the karmic obscurations, so that clear seeing can abide, clear vision. And the clarity is the simplicity of being. Clear seeing is here now, where there is no me. If there is the me that's wondering, well, is this clear seeing? If there's a question, it's not, because clear seeing has no question. Clear seeing is without doubt. Clear seeing is the simplicity of being the being, where the knowing is without question. Now, the knowing is without question, but in the beginning, it is tender and it has to be nurtured. And this is where guidance and support that keeps pointing and keeps the buoyancy of the remembering alive, keeps pointing again and again and again, because the tenderness can last for years, right? When we say in the beginning, it can last in the play of time for seemingly years. But that is why it requires a depth of resolute willingness to keep surrendering and be humbled. So again, a guide is necessary, because without a guide, we will so easily fall back into the delusion. So there is so much grace in the guidance that keeps pointing us away from the delusion, even when it is not really what the mind wants to hear. But there is a truth in all of us, the truth of what we are, the essence nature, that comes to be grateful for the humbling, grateful for the sting of a clear illumination that illuminates a thread of delusion, so that that thread of delusion can be illuminated in the light of awareness. Because it's the light of awareness that illuminates the Maya, that illuminates the stickiness. And in truth, it is all that is longed for by every being. But to start with, the knowing of that it's what you are longing for might not be in place, and it might take a number of years, even of sitting and hearing the same pointings. Some of you will recognize this, that you can be listening and hearing the pointings, and there's a moment where, oh, I see now more clearly what is being pointed to. I see, because clear seeing dawns. And then there's more of a readiness to surrender, a readiness, a willingness to see that maybe there are protections in place that haven't been seen. And those protections themselves have been keeping a certain distance, let's say, keeping the pointings at a distance, at a safe distance. But in the unseen, the consciousness is being cultured and refined. In the unseen, the self is hearing itself. And that is why the self continues to speak to itself, to coax itself, invite itself out of the delusion, out of the protection, lovingly, openly, compassionately, out stretching that invitation again and again and again, because we never know the moment where there is a deeper seeing and a dawning and the opening that shifts the perspective of seeing, so that once seen can never be forgotten. And once seen, never forgotten, is really where a true pull into what this is all about starts to really open. Now, there is no linear way that this unfolds. We are opening, and the consciousness is refining, all in a preparation, and the intelligence knows how. But the focus is upon being the being, because we have to open to the being and truly open to the being the being, being the awareness, let's say, out of the play of the world, the projected play of the world that's projected by the mind, that's the illusion, that's the Maya. We have to wake up out of that as the seer of it, as the ultimate experiencer of it. We have to wake up to be the true seer, to be the awareness of it, so that we're not just immersed in the sticky scene, we're not immersed and absorbed blindly in the experience of being a me, being a person, living my life, trying to make my life successful. We have to wake up out of the dream of separation in order to be the awake consciousness that is consciously awake to itself, remembering itself, in order to activate the intelligence of consciousness to deepen and deepen and deepen in the process of refinement. Because the true deepening can't happen until consciousness is awake to itself as consciousness. Because the true healing, the true transmutation is only when the discordant patterns of consciousness can transmute into wholeness. Otherwise, in the Maya, there can be all of these attempts to heal and transmute patterns of consciousness, but they don't have the shining light guiding the way, right? So opening to the being, awakening to being the awake field is what opens to the infinity of the true nature, which then guides everything to its true essence nature. If we are attempting to heal the discordant within a limited context, of course, it can only stay limited. So this is where psychological functioning can only carry us so far. We can't truly come to wholeness until we see through the illusion, until we illuminate the Maya. All spiritual practice, even that is within the Maya, can only move in limitation, right? If it's part of the dream, sadhana isn't even going to carry us to this truth. It's only being the being and being the awareness that illuminates the me and the deep and silent recognition in the silence of being, in the stillness that is the presence of the being. Only here can we squeeze through the aperture and illuminate, to start with as the witness, the spaciousness of the witnessing consciousness allows us to see from here as the witness, as the aware witness. I see the person, I see the thoughts, I see the body, I see the whole life. I see it, and as the witness, to just keep watching, to see it, is to recognize that as the witness, where are you? Where are you? That you are not enmeshed in the life, in the thoughts. As the witness of, you're not enmeshed. So to recognize the witness, the consciousness of witnessing, is to come to the spaciousness. And again, there can be many years in the play of time in witnessing, watching, 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 recognizing that you're not limited to the being the character, that somehow as the witness you're watching, and the witness itself starts to recognize what I am as the watcher of the play is not touched or disturbed by the play. The witness itself wakes up to itself. Let's say that the witness is what wakes up. The me, the character, the mind doesn't wake up. The witness wakes up. So the witness is very important. Witnessing, because witnessing, the witness, the watcher, the observer, the silent observer is the consciousness. So coming to recognize the consciousness that is awake and aware is to recognize your essence nature as witnessing the person, witnessing the thought, the body, the feelings, witnessing all that's moving and changing. And yet the witness recognizes that it's still and unmoving and is peaceful and uninterrupted. Whatever is playing, the witness is silent and still. So to come to the depth of stillness and silence of the witness is to open to the essence nature. So to be here watching. And now this witnessing consciousness, it wakes up to itself as it recognizes it is not touched. It starts a natural inquiry. It naturally questions in a silent way, well then what am I? What am I? And the felt sense of what you are is the felt sense of yourself that you have always been, without the story, without the name, without the body, that you can feel yourself. And the waking up happens when the consciousness itself inquires naturally within itself, consciously says, well, what am I? And it wakes up to realize that this is what I am. This is what the true I is. That what I am is this silence. What I am is this stillness. What I am is this witness. What I am is this witness that is the awareness that is awake to itself. Awake, yes, watching the moving, changing. But as the consciousness starts to get curious about itself, the focus of awareness is upon itself. And now, through witnessing and watching, let's say that mind consciousness, when it is witnessed and watched, slows down. When it is being watched, it's not being nourished and enlivened by more thoughts. The witnessing consciousness is watching the mind consciousness. So awareness is shining as the witness upon the mind consciousness that is thinking and moving. And through witnessing and watching, the mind consciousness is not being nourished by more thinking. It starts to rest. And so all of that movement starts to settle. It's like a lake that's all ripply, all disturbed and reverberant, and it starts to settle out. So it's like the mind is like this huge, vast body of water that just starts to settle because it's being watched. There's nothing activating more ripples. It's being watched. It settles enough that the witness starts to witness itself, because it doesn't need to be distracted watching the ripples, right? So as the ripples settle out, the watching allows for the awareness to see itself in the still, silent field. The awareness sees itself. Just like looking into this body of water, when it's moving and reverberant, you can't see yourself except in distortion. And as it settles out and is still, a crystal clear reflection. And the crystal clear reflection, when the mind consciousness stops just for a moment, that the consciousness consciously sees itself in a clear, an absolutely crystal clear reflection, and remembers its true nature, and the awakening out of separation, out of the false identity of being a person and being that discordant consciousness, the awakeness of remembering that who you are in truth is the awareness, the seer, that you're the awake awareness, seeing yourself, clear seeing, consciously awake to yourself, consciously aware of yourself. And this the being, this the simple being, silent, still, unmoving, has a deep peace here, a deep peace, such a deep, spacious peace, because the opening opens up the feeling of limitation to a wide and expansive field. And you are the wide, expansive field. And so the felt sense of being is that you are everywhere. You are openness. You are emptiness. And the remembering is deep in the innermost being, deep in the silence of your own essence nature. In the inner silence wakes up to itself. The inner stillness wakes up to be recognized, to be who you are. That you're not the one that you're witnessing. You're not the one that you're watching. That what you are in truth is the stillness, the silence of being. That what you are is this infinite open field, and you have never ever left yourself. And there is a knowing in the being that is clear seeing, the felt sense, this is what I am, this is the true self. That the true self is not anywhere in that projected world, that the true self is before everything, before sense perception, that you are before any thought, that you are here now. And the knowing is not a mental knowing or understanding, that the knowing is the knowing that is the light of awareness, awake to itself, remembering itself, awake and aware and innocent. You are the seer. You are the seer. To be lost in the illusion is to be lost in the experience, in the scene. But as the seer, there is the ability to witness and see the scene, to see the experience, and to be completely not identified in the moment with experience. To be in a direct experience of yourself, being yourself. And now, where this recognition has already landed and opened, as these words come, you will feel the flow of the knowing. If the knowing is in place, there won't be a sense of the mind saying, oh, I already know this. It will be enlivened as a flow of knowing, which deepens the silence somehow. It deepens the silence. It deepens the remembering. And where the flow is already enlivened and flowing, the flow flows. And the flow that is flowing is the silence in its dynamic nature, flowing to know itself. The dynamic flow is consciousness, consciously awake to itself and flowing in the knowing of itself. But let's say the first stop is the peace, the deep abiding peace. So do not be looking for anything other than what is here. To be yourself is to be here now. The silence, so deep, a resounding silence. When silence is awake to its own silence, like the innermost silence, can hear the sound of the silence roaring, resounding, reverberating, like a pitch or a hum. It is the nadam. It is the sound of silence reverberating in the knowing of itself. Deep in the silence is the remembering. Deep in the stillness is this remembering of essence nature. You are the silence. You are the stillness. You are the openness, the innocence, the simplicity of being. And it is where this openness openly meets itself. So if the eyes have been closed, it is this moment to gently allow eyes to open, to stay absorbed in the deep silence of being, but with eyes open, to not be looking outward, to not be moving to sense perception, but to rest absorbed, watching the person, watching the thoughts that come and go, watching the sense perception, aware of the environment, but not looking outwards, this resting absorbed, deep immersed in the innermost silence, and deep immersion in the innermost silence is where the awakeness is, where the remembering of awakeness is. To feel the felt sense of the presence, of your own presence, that there is an aliveness to your own presence. To be pulled into the aliveness, to recognize that the aliveness is everywhere. It's not inside the body. It's not a thought. It's this felt sense, an aliveness that is everywhere, all around, and to open, to fall into, merge into the aliveness. So it's as if the eyes are open and yet you're falling back. You're falling back into yourself. You're not reaching forward. You're falling back. The eyes are open because you are awake to yourself. You're not looking outwards. You're not hearing outwards. You're hearing yourself. You're listening deeply. And in the deep listening, there is this receiving of yourself. Deep in the innermost being, you are receiving, recognizing that what is speaking and what is listening is the same. That you are hearing yourself deep in the silence, that it is not words that you are hearing. It is the aliveness of your own presence calling you deeper, deeper, fall back, fall in to yourself, fall back, away from the projected reality, fall into yourself, fall into the peace, into the silence, into the stillness, fall into the remembering of who you are in truth. Fall in. Allow the image on the screen, the imaginings of more than one, of the you and me, to merge in a deep remembering of where we are one. And this is the being, the open field of being. In the openness, in the emptiness, the light of awake awareness is shining, and the awareness is aware of itself, simply being itself. The awake awareness is remembering itself, awake to itself as a vast open field, knowing itself, knowing itself. Recognizing your own silence, your own stillness, your own simple being, that you are not identified with anything you are aware of. As awareness falls in to be only aware of itself, like an intensifying focus, deep in the deep innermost silence, deep in the innermost being. Here you are, remembering yourself underneath the surface appearance, underneath the happenings, this deep remembering in the openness of being. That openness meets openness, and the appearance of two disappears into the remembering of one, where we are the same. The source of all is this awake awareness, and just being, the aware being, aware of the moving, changing, as the witnessing, but as this witness, it turns around to witness itself. It says to itself, well, what am I if I am not that worldly appearance that is moving and changing? If I am not the images on the screen, then what am I? And the witnessing awareness turns around to realize, oh, I am the screen on which all of the images are appearing. I am this vast, open, neutral, spacious, infinite, boundless being. Whatever is happening is appearing on this totally free and neutral, shining field. I am not any of the happenings. I am the field. I am the screen. I am the openness, the emptiness, just here. Knowing myself is the felt sense of freedom. Freedom, just simply being, just simply being, just simply being. The silence, the stillness, the simplicity, falling back into yourself, into the inner silence, recognizing the inner silence, the innermost stillness, falling in. Hear the remembering, hear the confirmation the clear seeing, in the stillness of consciousness. Awareness can see itself clearly reflected, and in the clear reflection, an illuminated awakening to remember its own purity, an illuminated, awake remembering, oh, this is what I am. I am not the moving, changing. I am not what I imagined myself to be. I am this deep, silent, still presence. So as these words come, it is to follow the pointings into yourself. Fall into yourself. Drop back into yourself. Can meet here in the oneness where the speaking and the listening is one. The source is the silence, the openness. Here now, just the felt sense of being. Being here now, just as you are. That we meet in the oneness, in the openness, absorbed, falling back, absorbed in the innermost silence, in the innermost being. It is to discover this deep stillness, this deep, unmoving, unchanging, still, silent presence that is alive, so alive, to recognize the aliveness, to recognize your own deep stillness, to fall back into the stillness of simply being, being yourself right here. Here the light of awareness is shining, shining in the knowing of itself, shining in the clear reflection where consciousness is consciously awake to itself. Underneath the play of the world and the surface appearance, consciousness is already innocently awake and knowing itself. And so we fall back and deep into the innermost silence. You have to fall through yourself, fall through everything that you imagined that you were, fall all the way through to discover your innermost silent being, to discover the peace and the silence has always been here, that it is not moving and changing, that it is always here just like this. And here the sanctuary, here the refuge of silent being. And the deeper there is a falling in and merging into this silence, at some point in perfect divine nowness, the consciousness stills fully for an instant so that the awareness can see itself in the full illuminated glory of itself. And the remembering of who you are is right in the bright, radiant light of this remembering, shining as the knowing of yourself. This is who you are. This silent being. This is who you are. Remember the deep peace that has never ever been touched or disturbed. Remember this openness, this freedom that has never ever been taken. Remember the innocence and openness in the wide vastness of your being. The freedom, the safety, all here, just as you have always been. And so now this light, it illuminates the Maya. Oh, I thought I was that person. I thought that story was real. But here, the light of awareness illuminates the dream. It illuminates the Maya. That nothing has really ever happened. You have always been this, just like this. There is no body here, and yet you are yourself. You are yourself. So just to fall back into the silence, into the stillness, the capacity that consciousness has to awake to itself, to open to itself, it falls as deeply into remembering as it can. And this is where the consciousness takes over, refining and deepening and bringing clearer and clearer knowing of itself as the unified field. But this perspective shifting is what allows this deepening to be smooth and for the healing and transmutation to come to wholeness, to transmute everything into the being, so that the knowing of this being allows there to be a depth of recognition, a light that is shining within you, that is the guiding light deeper into yourself, so that the attempting to seek in the external is surrendered into the recognition that the way is in, that the way is not in the world of distortion and corruption, that the way is into yourself. And as the light of your innermost being, the silence of your innermost heart is recognized, it becomes so clear that dabbling in the world, looking for pleasure and more experience, is not ever going to lead to the fulfillment that the heart is truly longing for. That what the heart is truly longing for is to know itself in its essence nature as divine love, as the supreme This is the great longing of every heart. And at some point in perfect nowness, the attention of awareness turns around to see itself and to rest in its own deep silence in order to fall into the peace. And in the peace of the silence of being, the remembering is confirmed. The remembering of the divine nature. And a deal is struck. A deal is struck where there is a letting go of the ideas that grace is out there, because the grace that is discovered to be in you and the flow that is discovered to be in the knowing of the essence nature is such a magnetic pull, pulling itself into itself, drawing itself deeper in to the innermost silence, until the innermost silence itself wakes up to its own dynamic flow as life itself. So we're drawn first into the silence, into the stillness, into the deep abiding peace. And there is a resting here and a confirming here. Confirming here in the silence, in the stillness, a confirming here in the innermost being, the essence nature, the source of all. Everything is traced back through witnessing and watching until the witness itself wakes up to see itself. So there is not someone that can ever wake up. It is waking up out of the someone. It is the witnessing consciousness that wakes up to being pure consciousness. You are that. You are that pure consciousness. And the knowing of that is awake and alive in the conscious being that you are. Being the seer, being the awake awareness, watching, awake, aware, and deep in the silent peace, being yourself and knowing yourself. To open to the innermost silence, to be able to deeply confirm that the way is in, that the peace is in the silence, in the stillness, and that the silence, the stillness, is the constant, non-changing depth, never ever shifting and changing. It is an abiding peace that is simply being, does not come and go, does not move and change. It is a deep unmoving, unchanging, still presence. And you are this presence. Just to feel the pull into the silence, into yourself, into the stillness, to feel the deep relaxation here. Nothing to understand with the mind, but just to feel the deep pull into yourself. To notice that as there is a deepening recognition of the silence, the innermost silence, as awareness is aware of itself, that there's a disappearance of the story, a disappearance of the projected world. It's not that there's not any appearance. Appearance is still here. And yet, as awake awareness is aware of itself, the focus is so intense upon itself that there are no thoughts about anything. That mind consciousness is slowing, stilling, deepening into itself, into the stillness, into the true nature, stillness and silence. Just to be here, just as you are, simply being here. A deep relaxation into your own innermost silence, your innermost being. A deepening recognition of the stillness. And it is the stillness itself that recognizes itself. And in the recognition there is an aliveness. Aliveness of the presence. A reverberating in the silence, in the knowing of yourself. So the recognition of what is always here, the recognition that what we are speaking of is not another experience for the me to have. It is the deep recognition of what is always here underneath the experience, underneath the surface appearance, that there is this field of silent peace, and you are that. You are that.